I've been in healthcare for over 30 years, most particularly in senior care. I see many, many patients, and many of those suffer from chronic wounds. When I first was introduced to the potential of nitric oxide, I became extremely excited because I knew of the great need. It's a molecule that's produced naturally within the human body, and the human body relies on it in a very significant way to heal. Ultimately, we don't want to be in the business of treating chronic wounds. We want to be the people that heal chronic wounds.
As mentioned by Tom, our founder and chairman, nitric oxide is a powerful molecule that's made naturally within our bodies. It has three modes of action that are particularly essential in the wound healing sequence. It's a vasodilator, it's a broad-spectrum antimicrobial with no known resistance, and it's a cell signaling molecule. It's in this cell signaling molecule that nitric oxide really features. It is responsible for pro-inflammation and also responsible for resolving inflammation within the wound bed. During inflammation, the body floods the wound bed with enzymes which are designed to clear the pathogens. But when nitric oxide is not present in sufficient concentrations, those enzymes, such as reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species and MMPs, not only clear the pathogens, but also destroy healthy tissue. And so nitric oxide's role is to be there in sufficient concentrations in order to resolve inflammation so that nitric oxide can then direct the rest of the wound healing sequence, as it's essential in collagen deposition, cell proliferation, and angiogenesis. But the problem is that as we age, we naturally produce less nitric oxide, more so if we suffer from a comorbidity such as diabetes. So for example, a 60-year-old diabetic patient may produce only 10 to 20% of the amount of nitric oxide that they would have as a healthy 20-year-old. Furthermore, these patients are characteristically compromised in their circulatory systems, making endogenous production or stimulation of nitric oxide a non-viable path. That leads exogenous or external supplementation of nitric oxide is the only viable path to bring nitric oxide to these patients that are otherwise deficient. The NOxy platform is a two-part system of two separate liquids housed in foaming bottles. These liquids are expelled as foams and then manually mixed to generate nitric oxide, which is a gas, which is then housed within the microbubbles of these individual foam bubbles. The layer of bubbles closest to the skin, or the combined foam, is then laid onto the skin, where the underlying layer of bubbles bursts, exposing their payload of nitric oxide directly to the tissue. If the concentration of nitric oxide in the tissue is less than the concentration outside the tissue, it will naturally draw the nitric oxide into the tissue where it's absorbed and can have its therapeutic effect. This treatment lasts only 5 minutes, meaning that it can fit into any flow of care or any clinical visit. Those that have come before us with nitric oxide bandages or nitric oxide gels or creams haven't solved for one of the key problems, and that is nitric oxide is a gas. So if nitric oxide can be produced by a bandage, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the nitric oxide is going to be absorbed by the tissue. In fact, that approach relies on serendipitous absorption. Gels and creams have the opposite effect, which trap the nitric oxide inside the high viscosity of those mediums. Therefore, the foam technology in its simplicity really is the viable path. I'll share 3 case studies that we've done, all of which have failed standard of care for a period of months prior to our intervention. In this first case, this patient attended a well-known wound care clinic in California for 3 times a week for multiple times, for a period of 8 months. In our intervention, we stopped all treatment, we washed the wound with saline, we applied the nitric oxide foam, and we covered it with gauze. We did this 3 times a week, which means there was a total exposure time of only 15 minutes a week, and within 7 weeks, the wound was completely healed. This is an 88-year-old bedbound patient, again, having previously failed standard of care. You can see within 3 weeks, the outer boundaries of the wound look much different, with reepithelialization occurring and a beefy red center signifying the angiogenic properties of nitric oxide. What's most astonishing is not only did the wound heal, but the tissue grew and closed over the exposed tendon. Here you have another patient that has suffered already previously, suffered amputation on the right leg. You see below the knee in the third picture. This patient had 2 parts to the wound, an upper and a lower portion. This case also included compression therapy, which is standard of care for these types of wounds. Within 19 weeks, both the upper and lower part of the wounds had completely healed. Speaking now to the antimicrobial benefits of nitric oxide, we took 6 antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria, things like MRSA, Pseudomonas. We inoculated pig tissue, and we incubated these tissue samples until they had matured and formed mature biofilms. The dark blue bars signify 2 back-to-back treatments. So in other words, a 5-minute treatment, we waited 10 minutes, and then applied a second 5-minute treatment. We were able to eradicate 99.99% of those biofilms in only 10 minutes of exposure time. Just this week, we received notification that the results of this study will be published in a major scientific journal. Our strategy is to first attack the chronic wound market, it being the largest and market with the highest unmet medical need. From there, NOxy intends to expand its indication platform. Any skin indication characterized by bacteria, viral, or fungal infection is an indication candidate. Any skin condition characterized by inflammation is also an indication candidate. The total universe of revenues available to NOxy from these many indications is 10 to 20 billion annually. We have raised a successful round of capital from our seed investors, who are owners and operators of skilled nursing facilities. There are 16,000 skilled nursing facilities in the United States, representing $150 to $200 million in annual revenue available to NOxy. This year, we will be introducing an over-the-counter product, which will contain nitric oxide. We will not be able to make any medical claims about the nitric oxide at this stage. However, we will be able to say that nitric oxide is in the foam technology and in the product. With the revenues garnered from this strategy, NOxy expects to be cash flow positive, x the amount of capital required to run clinical trials and to expand the indication platform. To date, we are currently undergoing our first in-human trial in Israel studying diabetic foot ulcers. We are currently raising a small bridge round of $1 to $2 million. Next month, we submit our IND application in the United States. Later this year, we launch the over-the-counter product, and then in the first half of next year, we expect to conclude our phase 1 trial, at which time we'll take the data from that trial and price a Series A. And then from there, we take the capital and then move into our phase 2/phase 3 trial design. Given that the 5-year mortality rate of people with chronic wounds is 5 times higher than the 5-year mortality rate of patients with breast cancer, and 13 times higher than the 5-year mortality rate of patients with prostate cancer, we are very passionate about addressing the needs of the chronic wound care market. We hope you'll join us in our desire and in our mission to end the chronic wound epidemic. Thank you.